What if I told you that the 60-foot luxury yacht, like multi-million-dollar yacht docked in a Hawaiian marina, actually made its owner richer?
Mm.
And, while the modest, perfectly sensible three-bedroom house you live in is secretly bleeding you dry.
I mean, it completely inverts everything we are traditionally taught about financial responsibility, doesn't it?
Right.
Because we are conditioned to view the yacht as this ultimate symbol of reckless extravagance.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the family home is supposedly the ultimate bedrock of financial prudence.
And yet when you actually look under the hood of how the ultra-wealthy structure their lives,
Yeah,
that conventional wisdom is turned entirely on its head.
it really is.
So today we're taking a massive stack of sources and basically tearing down the traditional linear equation of wealth. You know the one.
Oh, yeah. You
You
put in
know.
the hours, you get the paycheck.
Right. You put a little bit into a savings account, and eventually the math magically works out to a comfortable retirement. Hopefully. Right. But we're moving past that baseline today. For this deep dive, we are pulling insights from Robert Kiyosaki's highly debated text, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Classic.
Yeah. But we are aggressively cross-referencing his theories with the actual mechanics of modern finance.
Which is so needed.
It is. So we've got corporate entrepreneurship strategies from Cowrie Wise. We've got behavioral economics from financial educator Kusemi Isa, and some hard-nosed accounting reality checks from FQ Mom.
And we can't forget the advanced asset allocation frameworks from Blue Sky Wealth Advisors, along with some really solid institutional investing guides.
Right. It is a phenomenal cross-section of data.
It really is because, well, motivation and mindset, which Kiyosaki provides in spades, right?
Oh, yeah, tons of it.
That will only get you off the starting block. Like, if you don't understand the actual mechanical reality of tax structures or liquidity and, asset behavior, you are going to crash long before you reach the finish line.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with a philosophical earthquake that Kiyosaki triggered.
The whole poor dad versus rich dad concept.
Exactly. The concept of the poor dad, who represents the standard path of, seeking higher education to secure a safe, highly taxed government paycheck,
Right.
versus the rich dad, who focuses entirely on financial literacy, equity, and leverage.
Right.
The core thesis there is that the wealthy simply do not work for money. They spend their time acquiring systems and assets that make money work for them.
And, to make that thesis work, Kiyosaki had to essentially rewrite the dictionary on what constitutes an asset and a liability.
He really did.
He stripped away all the complex accounting terminology,
Right.
right? And he just reduced it to a binary behavioral definition.
Which is so simple, but so effective for people just starting out.
Yeah. Exactly. In his framework, an asset is strictly something that puts cash into your pocket on a regular basis, whether you get out of bed that day or not.
Yeah.
And a liability is literally anything that takes cash out of your pocket.
Which is exactly why the primary residence gets reclassified as a liability in his worldview.
Yeah.
Because even if your home appreciates in value over 30 years, month to month, it demands property taxes, right? Insurance, a new roof, maintenance, the mortgage interest.
It never ends.
It's a constant outflow of cash.
Precisely. And this brings us back to that 60-foot yacht you mentioned at the top of the show.
Oh, right. The Hawaii story.
Yeah, that story, which specifically involves his wife, Kim Kiyosaki. It perfectly isolates this mindset shift.
Right.
So they found this incredible boat in Hawaii. Now, under any normal financial framework, purchasing a massive boat when you don't have a huge surplus of liquid cash is financial suicide.
It's a terrible idea.
It's a depreciating asset with astronomical upkeep costs.
Docking fees alone. Yeah.
But the psychological pivot here is crucial, I think, because the instinct for like 99% of people looking at that boat is to just say, well, I can't afford this.
Yeah.
And as the sources point out, saying I can't afford it is basically a cognitive off switch.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. The brain just accepts the limitation and stops processing entirely. It just shuts down.
Yeah. But the moment you change that statement to a question, so how could I afford this?
Right. You force your brain to look for systemic leverage.
Exactly. You start problem solving.
And the leverage they found was turning a recreational liability into a commercial asset.
Which is brilliant.
It is. They didn't just buy the boat to, sip champagne at the dock on the weekends. They integrated it into a Hawaiian charter company.
Okay.
So when they weren't personally using it, the boat was leased out to tourists.
I see.
And the charter business generated a cash flow stream that entirely serviced the debt, all the docking fees, and the maintenance.
So they structurally engineered a liability into an asset.
Exactly.
It just paid for itself. And that allowed them to capture the lifestyle benefit, having a yacht in Hawaii without experiencing the cash flow drain.
Right.
It is a masterclass in financial creativity. But, and this is a massive
It's
caveat.
huge caveat.
While that Hawaiian yacht story is an incredibly powerful psychological tool, our sources from the actual accounting world have some severe warnings about operating strictly on Kiyosaki's definitions.
They absolutely do. And this is where we bring in the analysis from FQMOM. Because if you take Kiyosaki's simplified definitions into a boardroom, or, if you try to use them to manage a complex portfolio, you are going to get slaughtered.
Yeah, the real world doesn't work quite like that.
No, it doesn't. From a strict GAAP-certified accounting perspective, his definitions are dangerously inaccurate.
Because they conflate everything.
Yes. They conflate three entirely different financial instruments. You've got the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement.
Right. And for an audience that understands the basics of investing, we know you can't just blur these together like that.
You really can't.
Like the income statement is your profit and loss over a specific period, your revenues minus expenses.
Exactly.
The balance sheet is a snapshot of your net worth at a given second, basically. Assets equaling liabilities plus owner's equity.
Right, it's a point in time.
And then the cash flow statement is the literal lifeblood. It tracks the real-time movement of liquidity.
And what's fascinating here is that when you look at how cash actually moves, Kiyosaki's definition is completely inverted.
Wait, really? Inverted how?
Well, in real accounting, taking on a liability, like securing a massive commercial loan, is actually a cash inflow on your cash flow statement.
Oh, because they hand you the money.
Exactly. It brings liquid capital into your ecosystem. And conversely, acquiring a true asset, like, say, purchasing a multifamily real estate complex, that's a massive cash outflow.
Right, because you have to write a huge check.
Exactly. It drains your liquidity to secure the resource.
It's like confusing your car's speedometer with a gas gauge.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's both tell you critically important things about the state of your vehicle, right?
Right.
But if you are looking at your speed to figure out how many more miles you can drive, you are going to end up stranded on the side of the highway.
Oh, totally.
Kiyosaki is telling millions of people to look at the speedometer and calling it the gas gauge.
That is a phenomenal analogy. And ending up financially stranded is exactly what happens in what analysts call the liquidity trap.
The liquidity trap.
Yeah. FQMOM highlights a specific unnamed megastar in the sources who famously bragged about being a billionaire.
Oh, I think I know who you mean.
Yeah. And on paper, on his balance sheet, he absolutely was. He held an empire of real estate valuations.
But valuations don't pay the electric bill.
Exactly. He was asset rich, but cash poor. His capital was trapped in concrete, steel, and land.
So what happened?
Well, when macroeconomic conditions tightened and his short-term debt obligations came due, he couldn't just liquidate fractions of a skyscraper quickly enough to service the debt.
Oh, man. So he had the wealth, but he couldn't access it.
Right. If you operate solely on the acquire assets at all costs motivational mindset without respecting the rigid mechanics of the cash flow statement, you can easily build a paper empire that bankrupts you in a mild recession.
So the synthesis here is that we need the aggressive problem-solving psychology of the rich dad, but we have to govern it with the cold, hard mathematics of institutional accounting.
Absolutely.
You have to maintain liquidity while you build equity.
Yes. Liquidity is oxygen.
Right. And that naturally begs the question of how the average professional actually generates that initial capital to begin with.
The hardest part, really.
Because there is this pervasive, honestly, almost toxic narrative online right now that the only way to build wealth is to dramatically quit your 9-to-5, burn your boats, and launch a startup.
The fire your boss industrial complex.
Exactly.
It completely ignores the statistical reality of venture failure rates and, honestly, the intense psychological toll of pure entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
Not at all. And this is where the insights from Cowrywise provide a much-needed course correction with their concept of the billionaire employee.
Right, the billionaire employee.
Yeah.
Sheryl Sandberg is the archetype they use, and it is a brilliant example.
It really is.
Because she didn't take on the existential 0-to-1 risk of founding Facebook in a dorm room.
Mark Zuckerberg took that risk.
Exactly. But Sandberg stepped into a scaling organization, brought operational maturity, and captured immense equity upside.
She did.
She built a billion-dollar net worth without ever being the founder.
She utilized Entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship. Let's break that down.
Yeah, so the mechanics of entrepreneurship are incredibly strategic. Like, an entrepreneur leverages their own capital and takes on infinite downside
Right,
risks.
they could lose everything.
Exactly. An entrepreneur, on the other hand, leverages an existing corporation's capital, they utilize their distribution networks, and they operate with the safety net of a base salary.
So you have a floor.
You have a floor, you treat your specific department or your role as your own P&L.
Profit and loss center.
Right. You optimize it, you drive enterprise value, and then you fiercely negotiate for stock options, profit sharing, or equity as your compensation.
Which, if we look at the macro picture, is fundamentally how Warren Buffett operates.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he didn't build a startup. Berkshire Hathaway was a distressed textile mill.
Yeah, people forget that.
Right. Buffett is essentially the ultimate entrepreneur. He allocates capital into existing operational businesses and lets other management teams take on the daily friction of running the company.
While he captures the compound growth.
Exactly. He buys the cash flow streams that other people built.
But to be a successful entrepreneur or capital allocator, you still need that initial capital to deploy.
Right. And this is where I want to push back a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because this is where the theory always hits a wall with the reality of the daily grind.
Sure.
We can talk about allocating capital all day long, but if we look at Kusumi Isaiah's framework and the sources...
A 50-30-20 budget.
Yeah, the classic 50-30-20,
Yeah.
where 50% goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings and investments.
Right.
That math is brutal in our current macroeconomic climate.
Oh, it's incredibly tough right now.
Right. Like, if someone is stuck in the rat race, facing high inflation, where just their rent, utilities, and groceries are instantly vaporizing 85% of their take-home pay, how do they actually execute that 20% savings target?
It feels impossible.
Yeah. You can't just tell someone to stop buying coffee when their core cost of living is structurally outpacing their wages. It's almost condescending.
It is condescending, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is the most critical friction point in personal finance. But Kusumi Isa addresses it not by ignoring inflation, but by attacking the behavioral psychology of how we spend our remaining discretionary income.
Okay, how so?
Because when your margins are that thin, cognitive fatigue sets in.
Oh, decision fatigue.
Exactly. You feel like you're perpetually starving for a future payoff that might never arrive, which leads directly to self-sabotaging impulse purchases.
Right, so what the hell effect?
Exactly. You buy the expensive gadget because you feel you, quote unquote, deserve a reward for working so hard.
It's a dopamine hit to offset the financial stress.
Precisely. So, to short-circuit that dopamine loop, she introduces the buy it 3 times rule.
The buy it 3 times rule.
Yeah, it is a brutal but necessary mental model. So if you are eyeing a discretionary purchase, say a $2,000 watch or a luxury vacation,
Yeah.
you look at your liquid cash. If you cannot comfortably purchase that item 3 times over, meaning you have $6,000 in disposable cash, you cannot afford it, period.
Wow. That immediately strips away the illusion of affordability.
It really does.
Because just because the funds are technically sitting in your checking account doesn't mean your balance sheet can actually absorb the shock of the purchase.
Exactly. It forces you to internalize the opportunity cost of that capital.
And it makes you pause.
Right. And she
Right.
pairs that with the 48-hour rule for digital environments.
Because online shopping is so frictionless now.
Oh, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
We are bombarded by algorithmic advertising designed to specifically exploit our impulses.
Yeah.
By simply mandating a 2-day cooling off period before hitting checkout on any non-essential item, you allow the emotional spike to decay.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the vast majority of the time, the artificial urgency evaporates and the capital stays in your account.
But here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
Willpower is a finite resource.
It absolutely is.
You can't just rely on mental rules forever. Eventually, you had a bad day, you're exhausted, you will slip.
Yep.
The truly wealthy don't rely on discipline. They rely on architecture.
I love that. Architecture.
Yeah, you have to automate the extraction of that capital before your brain even registers that you earned it. And the sources highlight a systemic tool in the UK that is frankly staggering. The Lifetime ISA.
The individual savings account.
Yeah.
When we talk about engineering leverage, this is a prime example of utilizing government incentives to artificially boost your baseline yield.
Right, the mechanics are wild.
Yeah.
If you are under 40 in the UK and you funnel up to £4,000 a year into this specific account for a first home or retirement, the government guarantees a 25% match.
That's incredible.
They literally drop 1,000 pounds of free equity into your account.
Wow.
In the context of institutional investing, generating a guaranteed, risk-free 25% return in the 12-month period is practically impossible without taking on massive asymmetric risk.
Yeah, you'd have to leverage up to your eyeballs.
Exactly. But here, the system just hands it to you.
And when you automate that, when that 4,000 pounds is siphoned out of your paycheck through direct debit before you even see it,
Right.
you are perfectly executing Kiyosaki's mandate to make your money work for you, while simultaneously bypassing your own behavioral flaws.
So we've seen how to mentally capture your capital, right? And systematically automate its growth.
Yep.
But building that pile of capital is only half the battle.
Unfortunately.
Keeping it requires understanding the single biggest wealth destroyer in the economic machine, which is taxes.
Taxes.
We need to look at how the wealthy actually shield their assets.
And as we transition into the historical tax strategies outlined in Kiyosaki's work, it is really important to frame this analytically.
Yes, absolutely.
Whether a listener views taxation as a vital civic duty that funds societal infrastructure or as an aggressive overreach on private property, our goal today isn't to debate tax policy.
No, not at all. We are not taking sides here.
We're simply examining the historical chessboard through the eyes of the ultra-wealthy, basically to understand how they strategize their capital allocation according to the sources.
Absolutely.
Wow.
We are just looking at the mechanics of the game as it is currently played.
Right.
And Kiyosaki frames this through what he calls the Robin Hood fallacy.
The Robin Hood fallacy.
Yeah. If you look at the genesis of income tax, such as the 1874 implementations in England, or the ratification of the 16th Amendment in the United States in 1913,
Right.
these systems were not originally designed to tax the working class.
They were explicitly marketed to the voting public as wealth redistribution tools.
Steal from the rich, give to the poor.
Exactly. The narrative was purely tax the rich. And the general population aggressively supported these measures because they believed they were imposing a financial penalty on an untouchable elite, while they themselves would remain exempt.
But the architecture of a government requires perpetual funding.
Always.
Once the mechanism for taxation was constitutionally established, the bureaucratic appetite for capital expanded.
It grew.
To fund growing infrastructure and social programs, the tax brackets inevitably widened and crept downward.
Yeah, that's just the history of it.
And Kiyosaki's argument is that the burden systematically shifted until the heaviest marginal tax rates were crushing the middle and upper middle classes, which is the very demographic that originally cheered for the tax's creation.
Meanwhile, the ultra-wealthy, who, have the resources to hire the best legal and financial architects on the planet, they didn't just passively absorb the new tax burden.
No, they adapted.
They engineered a shield, and the ultimate shield was the corporation.
I really love the historical context the sources provide here regarding the global spice trade.
Oh, that's a fascinating origin story.
It is. So hundreds of years ago, funding a fleet of sailing ships to cross the ocean was an incredibly lucrative but massively risky endeavor.
So risky.
Yeah, if a storm sank the fleet, the investors didn't just lose their initial capital, they were personally liable for the debts. They could lose their private estates.
Their homes, everything.
Everything. So they conceptualized the corporation to compartmentalize the risk. If the ship went down, the corporate entity was liquidated, but the investor's personal assets were protected by a legal firewall.
Limited liability.
Exactly.
And that legal firewall evolved into the modern tax loophole.
Right.
A major cognitive hurdle for the average person is visualizing what a corporation actually is.
Because we hear the word and immediately picture a monolithic glass skyscraper in Manhattan, or like a sprawling logistics warehouse.
Right, but a corporation isn't a physical structure at all.
No.
It is literally just a stack of legal documents sitting in a filing cabinet in Delaware or Nevada or Wyoming.
A manila folder.
Exactly. It is a phantom entity created by law, but it possesses its own distinct financial timeline.
Okay, the timeline.
And that timeline is what creates the wealth disparity.
How so?
Well, the math comes down to a structural difference in the order of operations. Let's look at the highly compensated employee.
Okay.
Their financial timeline is rigid. They earn capital through their labor. The government immediately taxes that capital at the highest possible marginal rate through payroll deductions.
Before they even see the check.
Right. And then the employee is forced to spend whatever fraction is left over to fund their life. So it is own tax spend.
But the corporate timeline completely inverts the last two steps.
Exactly. A corporation earns revenue. Then it is legally permitted to spend that revenue on vast categories of pre-tax business expenses.
Like what?
Travel, equipment, real estate, vehicles, marketing. And then, and only then, is it taxed on the remaining net profit.
Earn, spend, tax.
Exactly. Earn, spend, tax.
That pre-tax spending capability is a massive structural advantage.
I know, it's everything.
And Kiyosaki illustrates this brilliantly with his own career trajectory in the 1970s.
Right. The Xerox story.
Yeah, he was a top-tier salesman at Xerox, generating massive commissions. But as a regular W-2 employee, his marginal tax rate was suffocating him.
Because of the earn, tax, spend cycle.
Exactly. But his solution wasn't to quit Xerox. His solution was to establish a parallel corporate structure.
He built a side business in real estate housed within its own corporate entity.
Right. And as that real estate portfolio started throwing off cash flow, he used the corporate entity to purchase a Porsche.
A Porsche, of course.
Right. And to his colleagues at Xerox, it looked like he was just blowing his commission checks on luxury liabilities.
Typical flashy salesman stuff.
But mechanically, he was buying the vehicle with pre-tax corporate revenue. He treated it as a legitimate company car for his real estate operations and legally bypassed the heavy income tax he would have paid if he bought it personally.
He leveraged the legal framework to capture the value of the capital before the government could dilute it. And the sources point out that this is just one of many structural tools. Look at the 1031 exchange in U.S. real estate.
Section 1031 of the Internal Revenue Code.
Yes.
This is the ultimate compounding machine.
It really is.
If a normal retail investor buys a stock, holds it for 5 years, and sells it for a massive profit, they trigger a capital gains tax event.
Right.
The government takes a 15 or 20% slice of the growth, which obviously reduces the capital they have available to reinvest.
But under a 1031 exchange, if an investor sells a commercial property at a massive profit, they can legally defer all of those capital gains taxes entirely.
All of them.
Entirely, provided they roll 100% of the equity directly into a new, more expensive property within a strict time frame.
That is wild.
It is. They can cascade this strategy for decades, trading up from a duplex to an apartment building to a commercial complex.
And they just keep rolling it over.
Exactly, allowing their entire capital base to compound without the friction of taxation ever slowing its momentum.
So we have established the psychology of acquiring assets, the accounting reality of cash flow, the behavioral hacks to save capital, and the corporate shields to protect it from taxes.
It's a lot, but it all connects.
It does. The final piece of the puzzle is deployment.
Right. Where does the money actually go?
Exactly. Once you have this optimized pool of capital, where exactly do you allocate it in the modern landscape? And this brings us to our insights from Blue Sky Wealth Advisors and the institutional investing frameworks.
Because when analyzing where to deploy capital, sophisticated investors don't just look for what's going up.
They aren't just gambling.
No, they evaluate assets through a very specific lens, which Blue Sky refers to as the triad of income-producing assets.
The triad.
Yes. Every potential investment is graded on 3 conflicting variables: cash flow, stability, and growth potential.
And they are conflicting because of the efficient frontier.
Right.
Like you rarely get all 3 at the same time. If you want massive growth potential, you have to sacrifice stability and accept volatility.
Take on risk.
But if you demand absolute stability, your cash flow yield is going to be incredibly low, like a treasury bond.
Exactly. You are constantly balancing the triad based on macroeconomic conditions. So let's look at how specific assets behave within this framework, starting with equities.
Okay, the stock market.
Right. In the stock market, you have companies classified as dividend aristocrats.
That's a great name.
It is. And to earn this designation, a publicly traded company doesn't just have to pay a dividend. It must have consistently increased its dividend payout every single year for a minimum of 25 consecutive years.
That is an astonishing metric when you really contextualize it.
It really is.
Because 25 years means that company managed to increase its cash payouts through the dot-com bubble bursting, the 2008 global financial crisis, zero interest rate policies, and global pandemics.
Yeah, they weathered every storm.
It indicates a business model with extreme pricing power and macroeconomic resilience.
So they offer a highly stabilized blend of cash flow and growth. But on the other end of the equity spectrum, you have the broad market approach. Index funds tracking the S&P 500.
Now, a lot of retail investors view index funds simply as a safe basket of stocks.
Sure, that's the common perception.
But mechanically, why is an index fund so much more powerful than trying to pick individual winners?
Well, It comes down to self-cleansing architecture and macroeconomic capture.
Self-cleansing architecture.
Yeah. If you buy individual equities, you are exposed to single-point failure risks.
Right, like an Enron situation.
Exactly. An executive scandal or a disrupted supply chain can zero out your capital entirely. But an index fund like the S&P 500 is fundamentally a momentum strategy.
Okay, how so?
It holds the 500 largest U.S. companies by market capitalization. If a company fails to innovate and its valuation drops, it is automatically purged from the index and replaced by a rising competitor.
Oh, I see. So it systematically prunes the losers and allocates more capital to the winners without the investor ever having to lift a finger or make an emotional trading decision.
Exactly. It captures the overall growth of the American economy.
That is such a stress-free way to look at it.
It really is. Now, if we pivot from equities to physical assets, the sources highlight how modern real estate investing has evolved far beyond Kiyosaki's traditional landlord model.
Right, because physically managing a portfolio of duplexes, dealing with leaky roofs and tenant evictions, is basically a second full-time job.
Oh, it's exhausting.
It's highly illiquid, too.
Which is why the market developed REITs, real estate investment trusts.
REITs.
These are publicly traded corporations that own, operate, or finance income-generating real estate. Skyscrapers, data centers, cellular towers.
And the regulatory mechanics of a REIT are fascinating.
They are.
To qualify for the corporate tax exemptions that make REITs viable, the law mandates that they must distribute at least 90% of their taxable income back to shareholders as dividends.
It legally forces the cash flow side of the triad. Yeah, so you gain exposure to the appreciation of commercial real estate while maintaining the immediate liquidity of a stock that you can sell on an exchange in 3 seconds.
You get the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Furthermore, the sources point to even more specialized platforms like Farm Together.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, they allow retail investors to fractionalize capital and buy shares in agricultural land.
Which provides an incredible inflation hedge.
Absolutely.
Because no matter what happens to interest rates or tech valuations, human beings require a caloric baseline.
People have to eat.
Right. Agricultural land possesses intrinsic, unshakable stability.
And as we move into the modern digital economy, the concept of an asset is expanding even further.
Yeah, beyond the physical.
The sources highlight alternative income streams with zero marginal cost of reproduction.
Like what?
Digital products, algorithmic trading models, specialized e-courses.
Huh? Okay.
You deploy your time and expertise once to build the architecture, and it can be sold infinitely with zero additional manufacturing cost.
But regardless of whether you are buying agricultural land, a REIT, or building a digital product, I want to anchor us with a critical principle highlighted in the sources from Warren Buffett.
Let's hear it.
Never invest in a business you cannot understand.
So true.
And that is especially true when you start utilizing Kusemi Aize's advice regarding leveraging your credit score.
Yes. Building a pristine credit score, by keeping utilization under 30% and maintaining flawless payment histories, that is about giving yourself access to cheap institutional debt.
Right.
But using leverage is pouring gasoline on a fire.
Exactly. If you borrow against your portfolio to buy an asset you don't understand, and the macro environment shifts, that leverage will liquidate you instantly.
So what does this all mean?
Well, it means we have just completely dismantled the traditional linear view of wealth.
We really have.
We've seen that true wealth creation is a deeply interconnected system. It starts with the psychological shift of acquiring assets that generate cash flow.
Right, the mindset.
But it demands the rigid discipline of understanding how liquidity moves on a real balance sheet.
The mechanics.
It requires behavioral frameworks, like the 3 times rule, to defend your capital from impulse, and systemic automation to ensure that capital is deployed.
The architecture.
And finally, it involves utilizing corporate structures to legally shield that capital from tax erosion while allocating it across a sophisticated triad of growth and stability.
The defining takeaway here is that financial independence does not require you to take on the existential risk of founding a startup.
Thank goodness.
By mastering these mechanics, you can operate as a highly effective entrepreneur.
You can leverage the security and resources of your 9-to-5 to generate capital and systematically deploy that capital in the background to build an impenetrable financial fortress.
You can quietly build an empire while everyone else assumes you were just working a regular job.
It's brilliant.
And before we close, I want to push this entire conversation into the future.
Okay, let's do it.
We just discussed how the definition of an asset evolved from physical real estate to digital products. But if we look at the horizon of Web3, decentralized networks, and AI, we need to consider the ultimate unmonetized asset,
Which is?
your own personal data.
Oh, I like where this is going. Break that down.
Currently, the global economy runs on data. Your browsing habits, your financial transactions, your biometric inputs, your attention.
It's all tracked.
Exactly. Right now, giant tech conglomerates harvest that data for free. They package it and utilize it as their proprietary asset to generate hundreds of billions in advertising cash flow.
Right, the old saying, if it's free, you are the product.
You are the product and they capture the yield.
We generate the raw material, they refine it and sell it.
But as cryptographic architecture and decentralized identity platforms mature, the infrastructure is being laid for individuals to reclaim ownership of their digital footprint.
Wow, okay.
Imagine a scenario in the near future where your personal data is locked in a smart contract. If a corporation wants to train their AI on your data or serve you an advertisement, they have to pay a microtransaction directly to your digital wallet.
Well, that is a massive paradigm shift.
Could your very own digital identity, your behavioral patterns, and your attention become your most highly yielding personal income-producing asset?
That's a huge thought.
What if the most valuable piece of real estate you ever own isn't a duplex in the suburbs, but the cryptographic rights to your own mind and habits leased out to the global network for a daily dividend?
That completely blows the lid off how we conceptualize assets in the 21st century.
It really does.
It takes the idea of making money work for you to a literal biological level.
Exactly.
Well, on that incredible thought, we want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Take a hard analytical look at your own balance sheets today. Evaluate your systems, scrutinize your cash flow, and whatever you do, make sure you know the difference between your speedometer and your gas gauge. We'll see you next time.